Log number 32. I'm recording this on the 31st of May, the last day of May. And when you hear this, is going to be the beginning of June. So happy June and welcome to summer? Question mark. Hopefully this summer is going to treat you well. And let's begin with the log. This log is going to be divided in two sections. The first section is going to be showing you what I have been working towards, and a preliminary work roadmap, and some of the statistics that I should have done last week, but I couldn't due to the amount of work that was needed on the design, and now I'm doing it in this one. So this week has been all about getting ready design number 6 and doing the foundational work and making sure the design is okay if I wanted to add a different perspective and all that. And that will be the second part, me explaining how that went. But for now, I'm going to be showing you visually how the preliminary work roadmap will look like and how I designed it. For those of you who are just listening to this, the visual is going to be shown now, and if you want to see it at a later date, the website under the audio log sort of section is going to have all this information on display, and it's going to be updated whenever I finish sort of a major part in the story. So what are you seeing now is a section of that web page and the beginning of the slideshows on sort of the statistics of what I've been working on. So let's get to it. This is the sort of front page of the Stonemason, the preliminary work roadmap and statistics, and the current date, the 3rd of June, which is roughly when I'm going to be making this available. Now, there's a disclaimer in the bottom saying it's subject to change. The reason being is that as I move forward and I finish sort of the workload, I then go back and revisit it. And when I revisit things, I either make them more detailed or I take things away, and basically it's ever growing. So therefore it's hard for me to have it on, this is the actual sort of structure, and it's going to be it without any changes, at least at this stage. So let's get to it. The first slideshow is showing the main chapter's story, and as we know, the story is divided in 3 chapters, especially the first arc, and I sort of made a list of what I have done, and as you can see, all 3 of them have been written, but they're pending reevaluation. Reevaluation is, given that this was the first thing that I've done when I started the Stonemason's journey, and I think it was middle of October, I just started doing the writing, sort of placing the words and understanding the scope of things. And given that back then, the idea of what I was doing and what needed to be done was much smaller, and as I was progressing, it became obviously much more detailed and much more in depth. I left the writing part at the stage where it supposedly is made for the 6th month sort of duration of the whole Stonemason story, which is not the case. So it needs a reevaluation. It needs sort of the detail that I'm giving into the designs and all that. So the completion of the first 3 chapters in terms of writing, it's sort of done. I have a really good foundation that I can just add on to it. It's not going to be too difficult to add things to it, given now that I have my setting, I have my character, I have the locations, the situation that is happening. It's just me adding more detail, sort of tying it deeper into the designs that I'm doing and all that. Below it, we see the additional story formats. Now, the story formats in my mind are basically, regardless the story that is written in the 3 chapters, there is additional story that can be interacted through the designs and the story itself. And what I have here is sort of like the diversity that you can learn this story from. So we have novel chapters that you're going to be finding around, some poems, some letters, and some other stuff that I left a bit sort of hidden, um, for surprise sake, I suppose. The preliminary number that this is going to have, it's unknown, as I'm not sure how many I'm gonna be needed in the end, and if my story that I want can be delivered in this amount or that amount. But I have completed so far, since the beginning, I have done 30. Now, bear in mind that the 30 sort of number covers everything. I didn't want to give you specifically how many letters there are going to be, how many novel chapters, how many poems, just for the sake of not having that statistic in the beginning. So, like, oh, I've read 3 letters, and that's it, I preferred having this mysticality behind it. And obviously the amount of number that is sort of aiming towards, I'm not sure. I was thinking this is going to be reevaluated when I finish the designs, and as an estimate now, the designs are probably going to be finishing around October, finishing everything that has to do with the very structural, the quote-unquote meat of the artistical illustrations of the story, and then I could just see everything. But I decided to do it now to show you the numbers, show you what the workload is like, so you can understand, not just by my words, but sort of a visual representation of what's going on. So as far as the story goes, this is the amount of work that I have done since the beginning up until the 3rd of June, which you're hearing this and you're seeing the statistics. And afterwards, we have the main chapter designs. The main chapter designs is the 3 major designs that I've been saying. These are the size of 54 cm by 74 cm, which is roughly an A1, give or take. And each chapter has its own thing going on, its own sort of design, and I have a status going on for each of one of them. So the first one, I haven't started yet. And the understanding on how that it's going to sort of, if it's going to need more designs or whatnot, it's still in progress. I don't think it's going to need more designs. It's going to definitely need the interactable art, which is basically, if the design has this object in it, and that will be the interactable art, and it might be an illustration, it might be something that you're going to be needed a close-up on, and I need to do that. But those are quite easy to do versus the actual design, because the actual design has measurements. It has so many things going on in its background that I need to take care of in putting it in scale. And whereas interactable art is just basically the object existing out of nowhere, because I don't really need the background, I just need the object to be nice and detailed, and that can be easily be done in a few hours. So chapter 2 is the same. I haven't really touched upon it, but I do have the references and the understanding on how it's going to look back when I was creating the references in November. And all I need to do is, when I go back to them, add or take things away and sort of settle on how it's going to be interactable. Even though I have a pretty good understanding, but given that I have so much knowledge from chapter 3, I need to sort of disperse the knowledge into the other parts. Now, chapter 3 it's the longest when it comes to workload, so I decided to work on it first. So, as I write here, it's currently being worked on. I have 6 additional designs. The 6 additional designs is the designs that I've been making so far, the 6 statues that I've been sort of explaining all this time in the majority of the logs that I have created. And with these 6 designs, there's interactable arts. And the next slideshow, it's going to sort of dive deep in how that sort of works. Completion, again, is 0 out of 3. I haven't really completed anything. But I know that the biggest workload is in chapter 3, and I'm sort of halfway through. Not actually even halfway through. I'm pretty much towards the end of it, except the interactable art that needs to be done. But I have taken a note of what needs to be done. But it's just the amount of detail that I want to do and all that. So as I say that, let's move on to the next slideshow and see the additional designs. The additional designs are 29 by 0.7 cm by 42 cm, which is roughly an A3. it's exactly the same size as an A3. It's just sometimes it's either 43 or 29 by 5, sorry, point 0.5. So it's a bit weird like that. So 6 designs. I have completed the 5 ones, and I am currently doing my last one, the 6th one, which is starting after this log that you're hearing. The completion is 5 out of 6, and by the end of this design, which I think is going to be early July, I'm going to be updating this, and everything is going to be updated. Every time that I'm going to be finishing anything, I'm going to come back to these slideshows and update them and sort of add things. And that's why I like the idea of having a visual sort of a roadmap of everyone who is like questioning, what is he doing right now? You can see what I'm working on. And as you can see here at the top, I don't know, my icon is in front, you cannot really see, but there's a date of statistics. I wrote it as such so that, whenever you're witnessing this, when was the last time that I updated it? So usually every time that I finish, like monthly, usually I finish things every other month, I will update the information. Going to the interactable art part, the interactable art includes illustrations, poems, notes, and etc. that I don't want to disclose, as I want it to be a surprise. So the preliminary number that I sort of compiled as of now is 60 designs. 60 designs, that's 60 including illustration, poems, notes, and whatever. And I have done 10 of them. The completion is 10 out of 60. Because as I was creating the designs, as I was working towards each design, I was getting new ideas, I was adding new things, and I began sort of understanding what approach I want for each statue and each sort of section in the design. So we're pretty much doing great on time, as in when it comes to this chapter. And as soon as I finish design number 6, the idea is that I will update this again and then give you the choice of deciding which of these 6 designs you want to sort of see in the mockup, in the preliminary example on how it's going to be interactable and how that looks and all that. And that will be the poll that I said in the previous logs that is going to happen. You're going to choose one of these 6 designs. I'm going to give you the compositional shape of the design, which is basically where everything is laid out but in shapes. And based on what you fancy the most and what the majority sort of decision is, I'm going to be working on that first, so to make it available and see how the interactable part works. And that will be the approach after design number 6 is done. And after I do that, I'm going to be going back to the 3 major designs and start designing them, the big sort of artworks. And I'm going to finish them all 3 and then see the interactable art on them. As I am doing with the 6 designs here, I finish the hefty amount of work and I leave the quote-unquote easier to do last. Now, I decided not to really add a time schedule. Like I was thinking maybe I should add a time schedule on where am I thinking this sort of workload is gonna take place. If the design number 6 is gonna finish in July, then in August I'm gonna start doing chapter 3, sort of major design, and then in September chapter 2, and in October chapter 1. But I realized that it's very ongoing, and at the same time, given that these are bigger designs, I'm not sure how much more time I'm gonna need and how easier or harder it's gonna be for me. So all I can give is estimations. But if I were to give an estimation without really having to write it on it, is the way that my mind is thinking on early June is that I'm going to finish design number 6 by July. In July, I'm going to be doing chapter 3. In August, I'm going to be doing chapter 2. And in September, chapter 1. And then I'm adding an extra month if anything goes wrong within these 3 chapters. And October sort of takes on the lead on anything that needs redoing or whatnot. Then October, November is gonna be all the interactable art and the rewrites and additions to each of the chapters writing sort of formats, and at the same time making sure that all the additional story formats are met and are executed correctly. So that's October, November, and December is compiling all these things that you're seeing here into the online format and making sure that when you click on that, that's going to happen. So it's basically more of a collage. And if all goes well and everything sort of happens, 25th of December, the deadline is going to be reached. Now, if I were to be asked, how confident am I to in reaching this deadline, I'd say I'm not sure. I want to be confident, and I don't really have any other sort of inclination in saying otherwise at the moment. But parts of the story I haven't really tackled yet. I haven't really done the difficult designs. I haven't really done. I guess those ones are the more work that needs to be done, because the writing part is very enjoyable for me and I can do it any part of the day, versus the physical doing art, given that it needs more preparation, it needs more the right type of day, time, and light, and all that. So after the designs are done, everything else can follow quite fast, and provided that I'm not going to need any breaks. The worst case scenario, I would say, let's say don't meet the 25th of December sort of deadline. Then I'm gonna need January for sure, and I don't think I'm gonna need another month after January, because if I, let's say, don't make the deadline by December, and that month was me compiling everything, or sort of I'm stuck behind in rewriting things, or making sure the written part is sort of done right, then another month is more than enough time, because I can do these things within a few weeks, given that the time schedule and the work sort of that is needs to be done, I can do it any part of the day and not really, or not need a lot of preparation for it. So this is the preliminary roadmap that you're seeing here. I quite like the idea that I placed it in the log here that you can see. This is the log page on my website. So before you even go to the first arc log section, you're gonna go to the first arc's roadmap. And every month that I finish a design, so let's say by July I'm gonna finish design number 6. This is gonna be updated to completed, and maybe I'm gonna have more numbers here or less or whatnot, and then I'm gonna go back to this and make sure that I state that I'm working on this. And the data of statistics that you see on the top here, it's going to be updated to the whatever day that I'm going to be updating this. So this is pretty much the thing that I've been working on towards the end of my week. And the beginning part was the reevaluation of design number 6. Now, design number 6 has been a wonderful experience for me. I would say, I keep saying this, but every design that I make, like the most recent one, becomes my favorite. And the reason being is that I'm adding all the knowledge that I've learned from the previous designs, and I'm making this better, making this more sort of on par to what I want to say and the skills that I've acquired and whatnot. On your screen now, you're going to be seeing the compositional section of it. So you're going to be seeing the shapes and the numbers that I've been doing for the past 2 designs, sort of the category that I'm going to be tackling the drawing section. So as you can see on the bottom right, you can see this sort of like semi sort of circle, which is number 1, and then the square, which is 2, 3, 4, and etc. Now, as you can see, in this design is a bit different than the other ones. The triangle section, which we have established, that is the focal point of any composition that you would ever make. Putting anything in the triangle section, you give them energy, you give them the attention that they deserve. So as you can see here, the triangle section is sort of set out in the background and on the floor in in a sort of like prone down way. That's the best way to explain this. As section number 3 and 2, with the squares that it has in, the accumulation of that becomes this triangle square, and then is reflected on the background, which is raised up on that surface. Now, this design initially was the most, I guess, simple one to execute at the beginning before I reevaluated it, and it was the most unique in a story-driven way, given that it lacked a lot of detail. It gave you this setting, and from the setting it gave you this question, and that question became the focal point that stays with you. So for example, the previous designs had so many things going on. You would see them, you're like, wow, look at this thing and look at the other thing. But in this design, it was more of like, oh, this is the room type of thing. And then this object here, which is very interesting, what's going on here, initially would have given you a question to sort of feed from. Now, when I revisited this design, I was like, I really don't like the simplicity of it, but at the same time I do. So I can still have the simplicity, but then add what I've learned on the other ones to make it even more interesting and introduce more of this, what does this mean type of response. So I think this design was the most time I've spent on the actual reference versus the other designs. As I started it on Monday and I finished it on Thursday. Now, the reason being is that at the beginning I started adding this unique sort of perspective on it, and I'm like, I really like this, and I left it at that. And then from the initial question that I said, which is, should I say the number? I don't really want to say the number, like the section that you're seeing in this composition where that unique sort of thing is. I want you guys to sort of figure it out when you see it. But that section existed before the overhauling, and I saw that and I'm like, I can make this a thing now. And after making that thing, I created a whole story for that, and a sequence. Now, a sequence is in this sort of context is that when you see something being repeated, subconsciously you have a concept of okay, this might mean this, given that I'm sort of giving you a visual and explaining you that this visual means this. And as you see it more, you begin to understand that the language that I'm teaching you begins to take place, and the words that I'm sharing with you becomes understandable, given that I see letters to be the objects and the sentences to be the compositions and the sections, and the whole composition together becomes the paragraph that I want to sort of transfer to the audience, transfer to the person who's witnessing, experiencing, enjoying, or etc. So the objects are the letters, and given that I'm repeating the same letters again and I'm giving them context, you begin to understand, okay, this means this. And I've run with this idea in this design, and as I created it and I was satisfied with it, then this other idea came in mind, which is tied to the history of the story and the setting that I'm sort of depicting the story. And I've added that layer of story in it as well. And from that, I sort of ran with it again, and I decided, where would the stonemason sort of be in this concept that I'm sort of creating? Not in terms of what place in the composition would he sit, but in his mind, where would his mind take him? And how much he would interact with this section of the design more or less than the other ones, given that time has passed, and I want to make it apparent in all these 6 statues, I want to make it apparent which was the last one he visited most recently. So I'm trying to think about that at the same time, and sort of have a sequence of like, okay, if he visited this number first and this number last, then what he revisited most recently, or 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 3 weeks ago, that type of thing. it's a bit too in depth to actually explain without showing things, but I think it will become very apparent to you as well when you experience it visually. The difficulty in this section, I don't think it's more or less than the other ones. I know I have placed some very interesting ideas and some new elements that I haven't sort of tackled before in this context. Alone, I have tackled them and made them into a thing. But in general, it has been a beautiful time this week working on composition number 6 and creating this roadmap and sharing it out for anyone to see, and it's going to be an ongoing thing moving forward till the end of arc 1, and inevitably in arc 2 it's going to have a similar sort of structure on how this will go in terms of me showing you at some point my roadmap as I begin to narrow down my ideas, which in the beginning, if I have done this in the sort of October, I was going to be stuck in that. Because initially it was 6 months, 3 months for this, 3 months for the other thing, and it was very structural. And if I stayed within the structure, all these details, all this attention that I'm giving this right now would have been obsolete, given that I wasn't going to make status quo. Status quote. That's how you say it, I think. My mind is sort of thinking about designs right now, and words are only making sense as I explain them and execute them with my voice or my tongue, besides my ponderings and that. I'm by allowing not having structure in the beginning, I'm able to form my structure when I feel confident about the design. And up until now, I was just moving along step after the next step, making sure that I keep progressing, but at the same time learning and not restricting myself to anything that has to do with the outside world and its influence coming back to this story. And the reason being, I've learned from my previous theme that I stated the composition in the beginning, and given the scale and the story that I created, I couldn't really veer off from it, even though I was affected daily with something new. Or this week, I was interested in this thing and etc. But 3 weeks ago, when I made this composition, it sort of emphasized that part of my life, but that sort of naturally became either obsolete or became more silent than what I'm feeling right now. And in the Stonemason story, that doesn't really happen. It's a small scale design, and I'm able to erase something and take it away or add something new as I go along. And I'm learning a lot from this, and I feel more satisfied as I'm explaining myself more. I feel more myself behind my compositions. And visually, illustration wise, and my techniques and style, it has an understanding that it's the same person who makes it, but you're going to be seeing a different side of myself, a different side that I think is the most representative illustrations and artwork that I've done, that I can say it's close to who I am, even though that's a question mark. It just feels more represented on the things that I would say this is a part of who I am as a person and how I operate in life. Yes, I like colors. Yes, I like the waves and all that, which have been known from my previous theme. But the diversity that a day brings into someone's day, and to be able to sit down and question that, and then towards the end of that, add it to whatever you're doing, has been magnificent for me. And it's a new experience, and I really want to transfer that to you and whoever is going to be witnessing this at any point in their life. And I've been enjoying this a lot more than I have ever done. And with me consciously taking breaks, consciously taking the time that it deserves without having to be concerned about deadlines, even though I like to have them, It's just for the sake of I'm sort of working towards something. Without a deadline, I would sort of say, oh, maybe I can do it tomorrow. But a deadline sort of gives me the incentive. I guess that's what I'm trying to transfer. And after this, and this arc is done, the idea is for me to take a break so I can tackle arc 2 in a much brighter, much more informed way, as it's going to be excuse me, it's going to be depicting his mind, which is a very own part theme. As I've said many logs ago, I do the current situation or slash the past, and then his mind, and then his solution from the mind. I think I haven't really realized that before, but that's how I operate in my life as well. Things happen, and then I go into my mind and I revisit things. I sort of imagine this board of scattered images, and then I take like lines and connect them with each other. That's like my mind section. And after I connect them, all of them make sense to me. And then I move forward with the knowledge that I've gathered in my mind, or trying to sort of see it in real life and make sense of it from the images that I've witnessed in my mind and the solutions that I've sort of said, but I haven't really comprehended yet. So yeah, this is log number 32, and it's been amazing, I'd say. It's a very unique log to begin with, and I hope this week, which is going to be working on design number 6 and the foundational parts, mainly measurements. Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to be doing just flat out measurements, not even drawing them, just writing them down. As you have seen in the previous log, the pictures of the numbers, yeah, I'm going to be doing that. So I can have a smooth sailing for the next 2 weeks with just me drawing it. I've noticed that if I have more measurements going in, I can give myself more leeway on this is what I've initially decided that I'm going to do, and the design that I need to transcribe. But as I see it coming to fruition and see it in front of me, I begin taking the initiative to change things on the fly and connect them in different ways, just because I'm able to see it. So yeah, this week is going to be drawing and measuring, and for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be doing that. Now, before I close this off, I know in June I have a few things that I need to address. I'm going to be taking a couple of weeks. Well, especially towards the end of June, early July, I'm going to take a week off, and a couple of days scattered around June as I have some opportunities to socialize and sort of reintroduce myself a bit more into the idea of not just being secluded in my studio and working, but more of the including life to take its effect and represent that in my story. So I'm going to be doing that. So the usual 1 month sort of workload that would take a design to be created might be a month and a few weeks, but that's totally okay in my mind. And let's see how each log from here on out is going to be expressed, given that I'm going to be introducing more social and more exercise as I'm going to be going to the beach now, given that it's summertime. How my thoughts will change and how myself will start seeing the world as I bring the world more into my routine of depicting the world. If that makes sense to you. But yeah, thank you for listening, and let's see how this week treats us.